So that game happened.
You are Locked On Syracuse, your daily podcast on the Syracuse Orange. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hello, everyone, and welcome into Locked On Syracuse. I'm Jackson Holzer, and thank you for making us your first listen of every single day here on the Locked On Podcast Network, where it's your team every day, and we are free and available wherever you get your podcasts, folks. This is a post-game reaction podcast. Syracuse basketball loses to Maryland yesterday, 87-60. It was a complete disaster. The game sucked from start to finish. My goodness. It started even before the first half with the starting lineup. Trust me, we'll also get into that first half. We're also going to talk about the talent on the team. Does Syracuse basketball have a talent problem, or is it more to it? And then, what now? What's next for Syracuse basketball? That's what's coming up on this post-game reaction of the Locked On Syracuse podcast. Before we get into everything, this episode is brought to you by FanDuel, and the NFL playoffs are almost here, but it's not too late to get in on the regular season action with FanDuel, because right now, new customers can finish the season strong with $250 in bonus bets if your first $5 bet wins. Visit FanDuel.com to get started. So, first off, I'm sorry that I'm a little late with this. Normally, I give a post-game reaction podcast directly after the game, usually within probably like an hour and a half. But my voice yesterday was just completely shot all day long. It's a little bit better today, so that's why I'm recording. But if you notice at times when I lose my breath, it's because I'm still regaining my voice. But it's good enough to record a podcast, so I am sorry. Okay, let's get into the game. That was terrible. There's no sugarcoating it one way or another, and I got to sleep on it. I got to listen to the post-game press conference. Nothing that was said and nothing that I slept on made me feel better about Syracuse's performance against Maryland. The first half of this game was one of the worst halves I've ever seen this team play. It's not an exaggeration. And it started before the game. To summarize it for you, they did not do a single thing well in the first half. They couldn't even get the starting lineup right. According to Syracuse.com, Elijah Moore, for those that don't know, he was supposed to start. He has been starting in place of J.J. Starling while he's out with a broken hand, but somehow Jair Davis was penciled in instead. I always kind of felt in that moment, I'm kind of confused. Why are they starting this lineup? But okay, fine, Coach Autry. I mean, if you want to see if this lineup works for a starting lineup, I'm down for it. But then he made a substitution about a minute and a half into the game, Moore in for Jair Davis. Now we know why. It was because that was never supposed to be the starting lineup. I mean, how do you get a starting lineup? Right then and there, already something's wrong. But let's talk the first half, okay? Charted a lot of numbers. Syracuse basketball lost the half 43-17. That's 26 points. That's not a good start. Syracuse shot 8 of 29 from the field. They were 28%. Oof. Syracuse had 12 turnovers. 12. They had 9 in the first 9 minutes. By the way, points off turnovers in the first half, Maryland 18, Syracuse 2. A 16-point margin right there. Maryland's a good team. They came into the game top 10 in the net rankings. The last thing you need to do as a basketball team is give a better opponent more possessions. That's the last thing you want to do. You can't turn the ball over 12 times. You were down by 26 at the end of the first half. But you were outscored by 16 in points off turnovers. Maybe if you take care of the ball a little bit better, you're down by 17, which wouldn't feel very good, but I've seen teams come back from 17 points. But no, you're down by 26. Syracuse in the first half was settling for way too many jump shots early in the shot clock. The strength of this team is not outside shooting. We know that. We're 11 games in. It's in the interior. But take your pick. Even on some of the makes, there was a sequence in the first half where Lucas Taylor hit a right wing three and Jaquan Carlos hit like a deep two, or it might have been a three as well. I think it was a deep two. They made them, but they were both shots that were early in the shot clock. And I didn't love the shot selection, but they went in. So what am I going to do? Complain that they went in? But it's the process. The process is wrong. Syracuse was also out-rebounded. There was precisely nothing that the Orange did well in the first half. Now, at least in the second half, they tried to salvage it. They only lost it 44-43. But at that point, what difference does it make? You're down by 26. So you only lost by 27? I'm supposed to be happy? No. I didn't really care much about the second half. The game was so out of reach. It was just a nightmare. It was a nightmare. And look, I'm going to hammer Adrian Autry in the next segment. I am. I will hammer him. But I want to acknowledge two things that I saw post-game. Number one, we talk about DART with the football team, right? And Fran Brown. And the A stands for accountability. DART. Well, I saw someone be accountable in the post-game press conference. And that was Adrian Autry, the head coach of Syracuse basketball. Because he did not mince words. He did not give any excuses in his post-game press conference. At least I can be happy about that. That he understands that this is unacceptable. That's about the only break I can really give Adrian Autry right now. Jaquan Carlos also said post-game, wasn't on the coaching staff. It's all on the players. Coaching staff said exactly what Maryland was going to do, and Syracuse basketball was not ready. To me, we're going to get into it more in the next segment about the quote-unquote talent on the team, but it's everything. Everything is wrong with Syracuse basketball right now. Everything. It's awful. Sorry, folks. That's just how it is. Syracuse basketball loses to Maryland 87-60. I'm Jackson Holzer. This is Locked On Syracuse, and this is a post-game reaction podcast. Now, gave you guys a brief summary of the first half and basically that nothing went well. Coming up, we're going to talk about the talent on Syracuse basketball. Does Syracuse basketball have a talent problem? That's coming up next on the Locked On Syracuse podcast. Did Rocket Money help you find any subscriptions you forgot about or that you were paying for twice? That definitely happened to me. I had a few subscriptions that I didn't even realize I was still paying for, and Rocket Money made it so easy to track them all down. It's like having a personal assistant for your finances. Rocket Money is a personal finance app that helps find and cancel your unwanted subscriptions, monitors your spending, and helps lower your bills so you can grow your savings. It brings everything together in one place, whether it's subscriptions, your spending habits, or even the goals you want to hit this year. Rocket Money has over 5 million users and has saved a total of $500 million in canceled subscriptions, saving members up to $740 a year when using all of the app's premium features. For me, one of the best features is the subscription tracker. I've used it to cancel services I wasn't using anymore, and I've already saved a ton. Plus, with their goals feature, I've been able to automatically set aside money for my future. No more stressing about budgeting every month. Cancel your unwanted subscriptions and reach your financial goals faster with Rocket Money. Go to rocketmoney.com/lockedon. That's rocketmoney.com/lockedon. rocketmoney.com/lockedon. I'm Jackson Holzer. This is Locked On Syracuse, and we are breaking down the Orange's 87-60 loss to Maryland in Brooklyn yesterday. It was just a nightmare performance from start to finish. I apologize about my voice. Yesterday, I literally did not have a voice, so I could not record a post-game podcast today. It's doing a little bit better, but still just a little hoarse, so please bear with me. Let's now talk about the talent, okay? Does Syracuse basketball have a talent problem? Feel free to let me know right now in the comments section below. Feel free. Let me know right before I get into everything I'm going to tell you. Just let me know what you think. Does Syracuse basketball have a talent problem? Okay. Look, I understand that JJ Starling is out. JJ Starling is a great player. 20 points a game this season. Syracuse basketball definitely misses him. That being said, there's talent on the team beyond JJ Starling, and it's undeniable. So why is the team not good? Now, you might be thinking to yourself, I'm blaming this all on coaching. Trust me, a lot of it is on coaching, but some of it is also on the players. I'll get to it more specifically why it's coaching right now, and then I'll get into a player in just a second. But the strength of the team is the interior. It's not the outside shooting, and it's on the coaches to recognize that. Why Syracuse basketball and offense continues to settle for jump shots early in the shot clock. It befuddles me. That's coaching. Where it's on the players is really with the shooting. They can't shoot. And the main culprit is Chris Bell. Chris Bell last season shot 42% from three-point. It was second in the ACC. He was one of the premier shooters in the conference, if not the country. And I had high hopes for him. Did I think that he was going to shoot 42% again? I actually thought it was possible. But at minimum, I was thinking, hey, he'll probably shoot upper 30s, 38, 39. He'll be the best shooter on the team. They need him to space the floor on offense. He's shooting 23% right now. We're 11 games in. That's a pretty big sample. They are only shooting 23%. That's embarrassing. But overall, I am losing faith in Coach Autry. I know I put out Poll Friday a couple of days ago where I said it's likely he's going to get a third year regardless. That doesn't mean I support him getting a third year. And at this rate, I don't. Let me go on record and say that. I hope I'm wrong. I hope that we're dancing in the Final Four next year and we're happy. Or that we have a massive turnaround this season, but I am not in favor of giving Adrian Autry a third season. I'm not. Let's talk about the rankings, okay? Let's talk rankings. Per 24/7 Sports, Syracuse basketball had the 27th rated commit class in the country heading into this year. What is a commit class? It's freshmen and transfers that you bring in. You can't tell me that means nothing. It doesn't. And I'm going to tell you a bunch of reasons right now why it does mean something. The majority of the 26 teams ahead of Syracuse are good. The majority of them. There are some that are underachieving. There are some that weren't really supposed to be good to begin with. And then there's Miami, who is maybe one of the only teams worse than Syracuse. But most of the 26 teams are at least pretty good. Syracuse is not even pretty good. Most of the 26 are tournament caliber teams or teams that could make the tournament, with the exception of a few, not the Orange. Some of the teams that are behind Syracuse in commit class rankings: Kentucky, Maryland, Tennessee, Michigan. Remember how bad Michigan was last year? They had a decent commit class. It wasn't better than Syracuse's. And lo and behold, they're really good again. Oregon, Texas Tech. You're telling me there's no talent on Syracuse basketball? None? I get that commit class rankings aren't everything. I'm not trying to tell you they're everything. They're not, clearly. Obviously, they were maybe wrong in a couple of players. But come on, they should at least be competitive in some of these games. They can't be losing by 27 to Maryland on a neutral court. They can't be losing a half by 26 points. It's not that big of a talent gap. You can't convince me it's so bad. Syracuse basketball recruited its highest rated high school player since Carmelo Anthony. That's Donnie Freeman, 6th in the country. They recruited Chapa Moore, a consensus 4-star player, and ranked as high as 58th in the country. Syracuse basketball recruited 4 transfers. Those 4 transfers were all rated 4 stars on at least one of the 2 major recruiting services that ranks transfers. All of them. You can't tell me there's nothing. There's nothing? It's barren? Is Syracuse basketball a top 27 most talented team in the country? No, they're not. They are not one of the top 27 most talented teams. I will level with you on that. But explain this to me. Should they be 135 in the net rankings right now? 135. Does Syracuse basketball have more or less talent than High Point, Middle Tennessee, Montana State? Those are teams that are ahead of the Orange in the net rankings. Rankings just mean nothing now, right? Apparently with Syracuse basketball. But why do they mean nothing? Could have something to do with coaching. If you're still not convinced, well, why do you think Syracuse football is suddenly on the upswing? Talk a lot of football here on this podcast, right? Talk a lot about Fran Brown's recruiting wins and his transfer wins. Why do you think they're better all of a sudden? Why were they not very good to begin with before Fran Brown? Go look at the recruiting rankings. They were bottom of the barrel in the ACC. Bottom of the barrel. Worst in the conference. Second worst in the conference. Year in and year out with Dino Babers. They hire Fran Brown. His first class in the ACC in 2024. It was 7th in the conference. 7 out of 17. That's upper half. This season, again, upper half. So you're telling me the recruiting rankings mean nothing? They mean something for football, at least. Fran Brown's a better recruiter now, so the football team is better, right? Am I calling out Adrian Autry? Absolutely. I'm calling him out. My expectations for this team going into the year, at minimum, be a bubble team. At minimum, just be a bubble team. That's all. I wanted it to be tournament or bust, but I acknowledge there are a lot of good teams in college basketball. Be a bubble team. They're not even close. You know what? Maybe they don't have a lot of talent. Maybe they don't. Maybe there is just a massive talent problem. After all. Well, then who's in charge of bringing in the talent? Who is it? It's Adrian Autry. Oh, but they recently hired a GM. Yeah, but that GM, Alex Klein, by the way, he was hired in the summer when the roster was basically finalized. Syracuse basketball made one more addition to its roster after Alex Klein was hired. It was Peter Mastrovich, a freshman recruit. That's it. That's all they did. Should they have done more? That's not what I'm saying. But he doesn't really get any of the blame because he wasn't there. He wasn't in charge. I think he was actually there. I think he was a student at Syracuse. Actually, no, he wasn't there. He was a Syracuse student at one point, but no. He doesn't bear the responsibility for this. It's not on Alex Klein. It's on Adrian Autry. It's either this team does have talent, but they are poorly coached and they are underachieving, Chris Bell, or they have no talent, but that's still on Adrian Autry. No matter how you slice it, he is either a really good chef that can't get groceries, or someone who's a great grocery shopper but can't cook the groceries. You pick. That's Adrian Autry right now. So yeah, I'm calling him out. And I hope I'm wrong, but I know what I said in that podcast, that mini one on Friday. I know. He's likely going to get a third year. That doesn't mean I want him to get a third year. And after what I watched yesterday, forget it. So coming up, what's next for Syracuse basketball? The NFL playoffs are almost here, but it's not too late to get in on the regular season action with FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook, because right now new customers can finish the season strong with $250 in bonus bets if your first $5 bet wins. FanDuel has so many ways for you to pick up a W. I love betting on which players will score a touchdown and how many points each team will score. It's thrilling. And guys, by the way, Syracuse football is now a 16.5-point favorite against Washington State in their bowl game. So you can get in on that action. Just visit FanDuel.com to join today. That's FanDuel.com for your chance at $250 in bonus bets. Make every moment more with FanDuel, an official sportsbook partner of the NFL. I'm Jackson Holzer. This is Locked On Syracuse. We are going over the Orange's 87-60 loss to Maryland in Brooklyn yesterday. We already talked about the terrible first half, which meant that the second half basically was nothing. It didn't matter. I talked about how Syracuse, maybe they don't have the top 27th most talented team in the country, but they certainly should be a lot higher than 135 in the net rankings. And yeah, you can blame a lot of it on the coaching. We're also going to now talk about what's next for Syracuse basketball, okay? And by the way, folks, thank you for sticking with me at this point of the podcast. We're on the third segment. I'm hanging in there. My voice is getting better, but obviously it wasn't good enough to record a podcast yesterday. So thank you for bearing with me, guys. All right, what's next? So Syracuse basketball finishes its power non-conference slate. They finished it. They went 0-5. Oof, not very good, right? Lost to Texas and Texas Tech, which still remain the best games that the Orange have played this season. They do. Those are two quality opponents, and Syracuse hung in there, and they could have won both those games. At minimum, they probably should have beaten at least Texas. If they just hit their free throws, they beat Texas. And think about how the complexion of the season changes if they had beaten Texas. They wouldn't be in such a hole that they are in right now. The other non-conference games in the power non-con, they got blown out by Tennessee and Maryland, and they lost a home game to Georgetown, who is a better program than they used to be. They're still not where they need to be, but they are certainly a lot better. They're 5-6 overall, and they got one more non-conference game, and that's against Bucknell next Saturday. Cool. Great. Tournament. NCAA tournament. Probably not. No. It would take a miracle. At this point, it would take a real miracle because Syracuse basketball did no favors in its non-conference slate. The ACC is not a good conference. It's really bad this year. And it's kind of sad because Syracuse is one of the reasons why the conference isn't very good. So people will try to tell you, well, they can still do well in the ACC, but it doesn't matter if they do well in the ACC because the ACC is not a strong conference this season. It's bad. They're getting their butts kicked in the non-con games, Syracuse included. So what do the Orange really have to do? Well, they would essentially have to go nearly undefeated in conference play just to get some sort of recognition for an at-large bid, which I think we can all agree they are not going nearly undefeated in the conference. Then it comes down to, can they pull off a miracle in the ACC tournament? Oh, wait, but you still got to qualify for the ACC tournament. See, this year, folks, and I've said this before, but in case you don't know, the ACC tournament's a little different this year. They're only taking 14 of 17. So you still got to be top 14 just to make it. And for Syracuse basketball, let's say, well, hopefully they do make it. Let's say they do make it. Let's be a little optimistic here. Then it's going to come down to, can they win 5 games in 5 days? Or can they win 4 games in 4 days? That's the path. That's it. They really cannot get in at large anymore. It's sad that on December 22nd, you can basically rule them out of an at-large bid. But I'm just being honest with you all. I'm an Orange fan. I'm an Orange alum. I want Syracuse basketball to win, but I have to be objective and I have to be honest. The only way this team can make the tournament is if they qualify for the ACC tournament and they go on a magical run like NC State did last year. That's it. As far as Adrian Autry's future, they're not going to fire him midseason. It's not happening. That definitely, 100%, they are not doing it. I knew when I woke up this morning to record a podcast, I wasn't going to have to halt my coverage because Syracuse basketball was going to fire their coach. I knew that wasn't going to happen. And I still think it's kind of a long shot that they'll fire him after this year. I still think it is because I think they'll be like, well, he's got a top 10 recruiting class in the country coming in. Even though people will say that rankings don't matter. But let's say they do. Let's say they do. It would be after the year. If they were going to fire Autry, it would be after the season. And I don't know what grounds or when they... Bottom line is, it would be after the season, and we're still a long ways to go. But at this point, on December 22nd at 10:49 a.m. Eastern, yeah, I wouldn't mind. I kind of support it. I support letting him go. That's just how it is. It's that sad right now. It really is. Thank you for making Locked On Syracuse your first listen today. For your second listen, check out the Locked On ACC podcast. Alex Dono and Kenton Gibbs, they keep it real, and they bring you the truth about where your favorite ACC team stands within the conference. You can find Locked On ACC on YouTube or wherever you get your podcasts. Folks, as far as what is coming up on the podcast, more football coverage. How about that? Next basketball full podcast will most likely be the Bucknell postgame on Saturday. Thank you for making Locked On Syracuse your first listen today. I am Jackson Holzer, signing off for now. Folks, if you like this podcast, click that like button. If you really liked it, subscribe to the channel. Turn on those notifications so you know right away when I am dropping the next podcast. And I will see you all again soon.